As I was walking through the towers, I was in the North Tower that day, at the time when the first plane hit the facade, the northern facade of the North Tower, and nobody had any clue what had happened. Some people thought perhaps a bomb had gone off. At least that's what they were saying on the phones as they were screaming and shouting. There was a tremendous amount of chaos. One thing I very clearly remember is the first time in my life I experienced and witnessed that fear that had gripped such a large amount of people all at once in that moment.
Yeah.
A moment before the world was spinning just fine, and then in one microsecond, a split second, it was swathed in that some unknown fear of as if that something was imminent.
Welcome to the Good Life Coach podcast. I am your host, Michelle Lamoureux. The intention of this show is to awaken you to your fullest potential. Join me each week for inspiring interviews to elevate an area of your life, as well as interviews with women entrepreneurs who are creating success on their own terms. Each episode provides actionable tips to guide you to design a life you love. Hey there, it's Michelle, and welcome back to the show. Joining us today is Kushal Choksi, who is an entrepreneur, a first-time author, and a former Wall Street trader. After graduating from Carnegie Mellon University, he started his career at Goldman Sachs in New York, and narrowly escaping death during the 9/11 attacks, he realized that life was too short to be playing safe. And we're going to be talking about that today on the show and your first book, Kushal, On a Wing and a Prayer, Spirituality for the Reluctant, the Curious, and the Seeker. Welcome.
Thank you, Michelle. Thanks for having me.
Thrilled to have you because you have such an interesting story, and I loved your memoir. I feel like I learned so much, and I felt so deeply touched. I think anyone who's old enough can remember where they were on September 11th. I can't believe it's 20 years now. I was working in a law office in Boston, and my window overlooked the Logan Airport where those planes took off. And I just remember that day so vividly, as we all do. And it's still so very sad to remember. But you were there in the building. And I wonder if you would be okay with just sharing, like you did in the book, some of your experiences from that day, because it's clearly prompted a whole life journey for you of self-introspection and healing.
Certainly. And I don't know how graphic you want me to be, but the day started like any other day. I was on my way to work. I used to work on the east side of the Manhattan Island. And as I was walking through the towers, I was in the North Tower that day at the time when the first plane hit the facade, as the northern facade of the North Tower, and nobody had any clue what had happened. Some people thought perhaps a bomb had gone off. At least that's what they were saying on the phones as they were screaming and shouting. There was a tremendous amount of chaos. One thing I very clearly remember is the first time in my life I experienced and witnessed that fear that had gripped such a large amount of people all at once in that moment.
Yeah.
A moment before the world was spinning just fine, and then in one microsecond, a split second, it was swathed in that some unknown fear of as if that something was imminent, and not knowing what to do, I just gravitated towards my commute, to walking out of the building towards my work. And
were you on the first floor? I didn't mean to interrupt. You were not upstairs.
I was on the second floor, yes, on the mezzanine, which was, fortunately, I was at a much lower floor where I could, if I decided, I could just step out.
Yes.
But in that moment, I very clearly remember there was a security announcement that was asking people to stay inside. A well-meaning announcement for sure, because it was quite unsafe outside. And against that announcement, prompted by someone, I just stepped out. And as I'm outside, I'm looking at what's happening um, it was something very, very um, unreal. It's something hard to imagine, let alone process by the senses in that moment, where I see actually people, jumping off of the higher floors, the first responders going in, the sirens wailing around us. It was just too much in that moment. And while I'm trying to make sense of that all, another plane comes from the left corner of my eye and just pierces the south tower in an ear-splitting sound and a huge ball of fire on the other side. And at that moment, it was imminent that this was not a freak accident. This was perhaps a deliberate action. And as I moved away from the building, I was walking towards the east side. I hear this huge rumble, and I look back, and this north tower is collapsing, and it's created this huge smoke and cloud and debris. The dust arose from the ground. It was gushing through those narrow alleys of lower Manhattan, engulfing everyone and anyone that was coming its way. And this was almost like a scene from a movie. I'm looking behind, this smoke is coming, and I'm running. You probably have seen some of those footages where this dust and debris is just gushing through lower Manhattan.
Yes.
And I ran, and there was a commuter ferry pulling out. The gangway had been pulled in, but I just jumped, leapt, and just got onto the boat. And
oh my God.
I was perhaps the last person to leave on the last boat that left Manhattan that day. And in that moment, I realized that I had become a statistic, a 9/11 survivor.
It's unbelievable. It really, your story, even 20 years later, it brings tears to my eyes, just knowing, how tragic and awful that must have been to have lived through that. But then also the blessing of you knowing that you were one of the fortunate ones that actually did survive, but then actually also having to live with what you witnessed, because talk about trauma. You saw people jumping out of the windows. That's just, that partially is what made me just tear up now. Just the thought of that is so painful, that was, what was happening, and just the fear to know that somebody chose to leap to their death versus the unknown of what was coming at them is just so sad.
Yeah, it was very difficult, and I did not even know how to process it, frankly. Initially my knee jerk was to just retrieve in my own cocoon, just withdraw, because I didn't know. Talking about it, thinking about it, kind of took me back to those moments. Those graphic moments are still so vivid in my mind. Even if I close my eyes, I can see that, people holding their hands, and it was just, tragic. And I'd never imagined a country like this, where I'd come to, as an immigrant, I'd come to live and to pursue an American dream. What was becoming of all that? This is not the country I knew. And so it was too many things happening in too short frame of a time. And like how you said it, on one, a part of me was feeling very grateful. A part of me was feeling fortunate to have made it out.
Yes.
And so there was this renewed sense of enthusiasm that, okay, now I need to go after the things that I've started with even more energy, and finish that unfinished business with even more intensity. And then on the other side, there was this part of me that felt so blah about it. It felt, but what's the point? You were fortunate this time, maybe next time you're not so fortunate. And is there a point to what this 70-hour work weeks that I was, effort or putting in to this Wall Street career without even asking why I was doing what I was doing. Right. So there was this interesting push and pull that I experienced in the same moment, and that created a void, a strange sense of void within, which I did not know how to come out of it.
Right.
And you've been in New York, and you know how it is. It's a city like New York forces you to be very resilient. It almost beckons you to wear something like this as a badge of honor, pick yourself up and just move on. And So I did that, but to an onlooker, I was living a normal life, perhaps. I did not talk about this to anyone, but somewhere inside my, inside my being, there was something missing. I felt like there has to be more to life than what I'm doing or what I have been doing.
Yes. Yes. And you were trying to escape to some degree with a lot of external activities. You talk about in the book of even learning how to fly a plane and taking all sorts of exciting trips to different parts of the world that, most people don't go to. And at the time it was with your girlfriend, now wife. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. I did that just because I didn't know how to deal with that void. And I thought if I do this, it'll perhaps fulfill me. So I would do this, go to a remote corner of the world, and only to come back to that same space of void. I would change careers, move from a promising Wall Street job to a startup, thinking that would bring fulfillment. But little did I know it all proved to be some distractions. And I would just keep coming back to that space that, no, this is not it. And I would do something even crazier, even more adventurous, like learning to fly a plane, and I was, no, this is not it. So it was an interesting pursuit for in no particular direction, not knowing where it was leading, where I was going.
Absolutely. I mean, were you depressed?
I don't think I was depressed. There was a sense of disinterest and a sense of urgency, a fake sense of urgency born at the same time. So I don't think I was depressed, but I was definitely questioning everything that I was doing. It was the first time there was a disinterest. For the first time, I experienced that disinterest in the mundane, and I felt that no, about running up the corporate ladder. No, right? Life is not about big bonuses. No, so it was, no, this is not it. No, this is not it. I did not know what it is about or what I'm supposed to do, but I knew that what I was doing in that moment wasn't really bringing me that deep sense of fulfillment.
Yes. Well, you had an awakening of the importance of and the preciousness of our lives. It sounds right like that, that you write in the book, all of us at some point are going to have a 9/11 moment, whether or not it's as traumatic or a diagnosis of a health, something, cancer or something like that. But everyone deals with it differently. And it sounds like for you, you were somehow guided to something that was going to start taking you within. Can you tell us that story of how meditation and breathing entered your life and started to soften some of that void in your heart to let you know that maybe there is another way to feel connected to life in the way that we're intended to? I believe that we're intended to when we're not busying ourselves with it's sort of a dance of, we need to have some ambition. And yet also, so how did you first start on that path?
So it's interesting. And that's where perhaps the subtitle of my book comes from, the spirituality for the reluctant, the curious, and the seeker, because it was that experience of meditation and the breath work for the first time that gave my reluctance, and made way for some curiosity. I was reluctant because I had always thought that meditation was something you do when you're done with everything else in life. A pursuit for later age, a pursuit when you don't have any more responsibility, something that's anti-ambition, I thought. How mistaken I was. I thought to be able to meditate, to be able to take out that time from your precious 24 hours, you have to drop everything that you're doing and perhaps go to a cave, become a monk, and
devote your life to it.
I really thought that the pursuit of happiness, as I knew, and meditation were mutually exclusive things.
Interesting.
And so, hence the reluctance to go towards something. In the meantime, I had read about it all. I had read about all these things as a concept. They were very firmly established concepts, almost as if somebody who's never had a tiramisu and you talk about them and you explain it to them, so they read about every recipe on the planet. They know it, how to make it, but they've never tasted it.
Interesting.
So I was that guy.
Yeah.
And the first time I experienced, so this my spiritual teacher, Sri Ravi Shankar, who was traveling from India to New York, and there was a public talk that he was addressing. It was open to all, and somehow, as reluctant as I was, through a sequence of funny events, I ended up there. And the first time I meditated, I experienced that void, that stillness, for the first time ever in my life. And I thought, there's something in here. I'd always wanted to do. I had read about this power of now, being in the moment.
Yes.
Don't let your mind wander in the future and the past. But I had struggled to really make it happen. I didn't know how. And here, unbeknownst to any expectations, without any effort, I just experienced that. I just landed that. And it was beautiful. But, a Wall Street train left brain is not so forgiving. It started asking, but show me the science, show me the data.
Right.
Were you really relaxing, or did you sleep off? That's why you didn't have any thoughts. Maybe you were so tired from the last night's party.
Right.
Or was this just maybe a placebo? What is it?
Right.
And so when I started looking at the research, and I started looking at the underlying data of how this breath work and meditation work, that was a big aha moment for me in that. And I was like, no, this is something that I must pursue, as I don't know if anything else has the answer, but I've not yet ruled out that this thing does not have the answer. And just for that, I'm going to go further deeper into it.
I love it. And how many people were in the room that day?
Perhaps maybe 150, 200 people.
Wow. And you were able to get into that stillness and that beautiful place, even with all those people sitting there. What kind of meditation was it, or breathing were you doing?
It was a Gurudev Sri Ravi Shankar led a guided meditation in that afternoon. I clearly remember. And it was just, there was something about him. The first time I saw him, another reason for my reluctance was a distinct aversion to teachers, spiritual teachers. I was not, from my past experience, I was squarely unimpressed, and also I thought they all had an agenda. So I didn't need a spiritual master or teacher.
Yes.
Little did I know that I never had a problem learning mathematics and finance from a teacher, but something as subtle as navigating through my own maze of mind, I was averse to having a guide, a coach. Put that aside for a moment, but there was something about him. He appealed to my left and right brain at the same time. There was what he was talking had scientific bent to it.
Yes.
And that meditation had a very, very very rejuvenating experience, very calming experience. And it was a guided meditation, but perhaps it was, I don't know what it was. I still can't put a finger to, okay, what was it that got me that experience? It was just,
right.
Perhaps it was his calming voice. It was that energy of the group that was in there. Whatever it was, he said something and poof, like I slipped into meditation, or whatever I thought at that time it was. And when I came out, it was some 20 minutes had passed on the clock. And this is the longest period I had experienced a state of mind without any thoughts.
Wow.
Michelle, this was something, a completely foreign concept to me.
Yes.
And it was precious.
I think we all want that. So where did you go from there? Did you just decide you were going to try to meditate every day, or did you continue to follow his work? Where did you go next?
So in the days to follow, I actually started doing a lot of scientific digging around. I wanted to do some research. So I
love
that.
it. You had to satisfy your left brain.
I had to make sure this was not some kind of woo-woo. This was not some sort of placebo that I had,
Right.
fallen into.
Right.
So I wanted to know how actually it worked.
Yes.
I was professionally and through my education, I was trained not to take anything on its face value.
Yes.
Be that as it may, but that was my professional training.
Yes.
And unfortunately, I was looking at this through the same lens. And so while I was looking at it, my friend who had invited me to this talk, he said, there's this sky breath meditation, this technique, this breathwork technique, that same Gurudev Sri Ravi Shankar has introduced, and we are teaching it. Why don't you come and experience it? And it's something that I had been putting off for a long time. And I said, fine, I'll come. And when I experienced that breath work, that was like a change of orbits for me. It's like, you're launched and then you're circling around in some orbit, and then you experience another jolt of force, and then you go to the next orbit. And that's what that breathwork did for me. It was very profound, and that I can't even imagine how something as simple as just sitting and breathing. There's nothing fancy, nothing esoteric about it, and it can create that sense of wholeness that brings that stillness, that consolidation within, and removes all that chitter chatter of the mind, and makes you so present. It was a matter of wow for me in that moment.
It's so cool because we were talking before the interview started. I had mentioned that James Nestor had been on, and you had talked about breath work. I didn't realize that James's book, which is Breath, the New Science of a Lost Art, when he took that first class, that it was sky breath, which is the same breath work you did. What is sky breath? Yeah, please.
He mentions in that book, in his book, the Sanskrit name is Sudarshan Kriya.
Okay.
Su is proper, darshan is vision, and kriya is a purifying action.
Okay.
And it was his experience that he or his doctors could not explain, which got him down the path of inquiry. And coincidentally, it's the same sky breath that triggered my journey also. But yeah, it's a very innocent breathing technique. It uses the natural rhythms in our own breath.
Okay.
And it uses these rhythms to bring coherence. We have these different functions. We have physical functions. We have functions of cognition. We have perception abilities. We have intellect. We have, of course, the memory, and all these functions are constantly. There's a balancing act across these functions that helps us be about in the world. There's constantly you're constantly tapping into these functions to live a meaningful life, to do what you have to do. And then when these functions go out of the rhythm, when there are stresses in these different layers,
yes,
that's when you feel not yourself. That's when stress creeps in. That's when at a deeper end of the spectrum, depression and all these mental health illnesses come in. What sky breath does is it just harmonizes all these functions just through our action of breath. It's very simple. And there's a scientific validation, which of course I had studied a lot before going in.
Of course.
How it does, how it activates your vagus nerve, which then balances your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. How it reduces the flow of cortisol, the stress hormone, just in by 56% within 2 weeks of practicing. All these scientific details that I won't bore you with, but at some point of time, all the scientific validation and data started becoming secondary to me, and the experience of that wholeness, the experience of being there in that moment, the experience of that stillness, it started taking over. And at that point, I'm like, it's okay. This data will eventually catch up, but I want to keep going in this direction, and explore the more dimensions of it.
Okay. And if somebody were curious about learning about the sky breath, where would they even find a class, or how would they learn more about it?
There's this nonprofit organization called Art of Living Foundation that offers sky breath. This is the Art of Living Foundation was started by Sri Ravi Shankar.
Okay.
So you can go to artofliving.org and look up a class, in your time zone, in your area, the sky breath meditation. I also volunteer my time and facilitate sky breath workshops. So on
where
my
do you
website,
do it? Yeah. What is yours?
my website, kushalchoksi.com, has the list of the next upcoming workshop that I'll be facilitating.
Very cool.
But there are tons of volunteers and instructors like myself out there around the world. Almost 30,000 of us in more than 150 countries. So
amazing. Yeah, it's interesting. I was telling you again before the interview started that I had done 2 breathwork sessions with a gentleman who came on to talk about a different kind of, based on some yogic tradition too. It's a different kind of breath work. James is about the nasal breathing. I don't know if this is nasal breathing too. The other gentleman's is not. I had a deeply profound, and I don't know, I just felt sort of transported, and I thought there's something to this, that it seems so simple, but yet it's not. We need to breathe to live. It's at the heart of what keeps our heart beating and everything going. So we're overlooking, I think, something so accessible, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you look at what keeps us going, it's our vital force that in ancient times they used to call it prana, this subtle force that keeps us going. And we get it from 4 main sources. You get it from food, you get it from sleep, you get it from breath, and you get it from state of mind, the calm, meditative state of mind. And the last 2, perhaps the more effective ones, are the least, paid attention to. I think everyone breathes as we are listening to this or talking to each other. We are breathing, but 25,000 times a day that we breathe, how many times we're really aware of that path of breath and a little bit of awareness on it? And it just shifts the complete, perhaps it's very obvious now, but it wasn't obvious when I acquired this practice in early 2000s, which was that there's a relationship between the state of mind and the breath. It's like an angry person breathes differently. A person who is in grief has a sigh of longer exhalation.
Yes.
But the converse is also true. Like how emotions drive the breath, if you learn to modulate your breath, it can control the state of mind. And that's what the sky breath is kind of predicated upon, that just by learning to modulate our own breath through its rhythms, you can control how you feel. And your state of mind governs your quality of life. It's simple.
It's amazing. And so did you just start meditating and doing the breath work daily? Take us again further into your journey here we are 20 years later, and you seem pretty relaxed and happy to me. Take us through where you went.
Yeah. As a trader, I was trained to look at return on investment into everything.
Yeah.
And of course, return on investment of time also. And here, this was this one practice where it was kind of a gift that kept on giving. Even after I completed the workshop, I would do it every day just to feel so good. Just feel that I would do it like 20 minutes a day in the morning, and it would set the tone for the rest of the day. It would completely change how I would show up at work, how I in my day-to-day relationships, with my wife, with my boss, everything. It I don't know if I can do justice by putting into words, but I could see the difference. And I briefly write about it in my book, where one day I clearly remember it was a very cathartic day on financial markets. There was some of the market was crashing, and things were going haywire. And for the first time, I did not see myself react like how people react on the trading floor, which is quite animated, by the way.
I
And
can just imagine.
and my boss, towards the end of the day, came to me and asked me if I was okay, if I was unwell, why my response was so muted.
Yes.
And it was perhaps the first time I realized that, I was really responding to situation rather than reacting to it, and responding to it in a way that was more life supporting for me, and where I wanted to be.
Yes.
And so that was the first time I actually felt like, no, this is working. There's something in it that's paying dividends.
Yes.
And so I kept doing it. It's been now 16 years, and
Wow.
and I practice it every day. It's Michelle, the funny thing is, no two experiences are the same.
With the meditation and breathing.
With the sky breath and the meditation, no two experiences of sky breath meditation are the same. It gives me and my system, my nervous system, my physical body, what it needs in that moment.
Wow. Oh, I just got chills from that. I love that.
I've experienced, amazing. Yeah, I mean, and I've learned this over a period of time. There would be some days when I'd be extremely tired, and it would give my body that nourishment that I need. Some days when I have tremendous amount of thoughts that I cannot do anything with, and it would quiet those thoughts down. It would really come and help me and give me what I need in that moment. And that was amazing, I thought.
That is amazing. I think we're all seeking more of that, especially with the last, 18 months of what we've been through now. I mean, what an unusual time. I want to ask you about that, but just quickly, are you following along? I know you teach it now, but in the early days, or if somebody were to try, are you doing it on your own, or are you following a guided, somebody guiding you through it?
So
through an app or something.
I'm glad you mentioned this. And this is the time when there were no smartphones. So of course there were no apps.
Good point. Yep, good point.
But what really worked and what kept me accountable was this community of like-minded folks who were also practicing.
Okay.
And that community is even there today. And if not for that community, if not for those friends who said, no, don't give in to your mood of the mind today. Just come because I'm going, just come. Those days we used to breathe in person we used to meet in a physical center and breathe. Now we do it on the Zoom, same experience, different surroundings.
Medium. Yeah.
Yeah. But if not for that band of brothers, not for that community of like-minded people, I would not have come so far. And that's what I loved about Sky Breath, is that there were people who were there to support me on this path. After a point, it can get boring. Such was my experience, that you keep breathing every day. Of course, you're feeling good, but sometimes you feel like, what, I had a late night last night, not today. Maybe I just need to sleep it off, or maybe I'll finish
Netflix.
This episode of Netflix. Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Of course. Yeah.
But in that moment, if there's someone who says, "Oh no, come, let's do it," it goes a long way.
It does, and we all are craving community. I think if the pandemic did anything, it put a spotlight on just how much we need each other. And you look at how angry and volatile life is right now, and there's unity is just non-existent in this, at least in the US. I don't know what it's like, honestly, in other countries, but it's palpable here. And it's sad to me, actually, to see what's happening. And I think the remembrance of 9/11 was a memory of when actually people came together. Within the tragedy, there was a lot of beauty and support and love. The love was there. Yeah. And now the love is not, I mean, there is love there, but it's not prevalent in the way that it was with that situation. So I would love your thoughts on, your worldview on, like, I don't know, just what can we be doing to bring more unity? I mean, maybe if people were breathing and meditating together, the world would be a more harmonious place. But I just would love your, sort of your how your worldview is shifted based on your experience of having been a survivor and then watching what's going on in the world right now.
You're absolutely right. I still remember the next few days, after 9/11, where the whole country had galvanized together. You would walk out and there were people handing you water, or they're just like out there to tell you, can I do something for you?
Yes.
And I feel that with whether it's through the passage of time or as the life took over, perhaps the focus has moved from what can I do for you to what can I do for myself? Like it's just become such a the approach or the focus has become very self-focused, self-centered.
Yes.
And I think that is one thing that's perhaps creating that apathy that we see around us.
Yeah.
Also, I feel to see a society, a community more thriving and more happy, one has to be happy from within. Right? If you are stressed, if you are not yourself, if you have something weighing you down, forget about showing up for others or forget about making some impact in outside in the outer world. So I feel that, and something I learned from my teacher, that outer change begins from inner change, and not as a lot of effort, not as like really working hard towards it, but just by being, just as a happening. That when you practice these things, when you're more mindful, when you're in touch with yourself, that inner dimension, I think the world around us just becomes more pleasant.
Yeah. I believe in collective energy as well. So if you're in that loving place and you actually visualize or intentionally send love out, that it truly is reaching everyone, that we are in fact one, and that the illusion of separation is in fact just an illusion, that we are not disconnected in the way that we think that we are. So,
and there's science has proven it out. There have been studies. There's this very well-known study called Maharishi effect, where it said that 1% of the population that meditates, it can have a huge impact in the community around it, not just in the life of that person. And they did this study with, and the details escape me at this moment, but in some particular area where they studied the level of crime for certain days, while they had some people sit there and meditate, 8 hours a day, and the level of crimes and everything that just significantly improved. It just came down.
Wow.
And so I like how you said, I totally believe in power of a collective coming together and even putting out an intention.
Right. And fear, unfortunately, I think, to your point, makes people more self-focused because it becomes more of like a primitive survival energy versus there's less room for that softening and remembering of how we are connected and that we are, in fact, each other's brothers and sisters. I mean, I had read something about there being an increase of fights on airplanes, like a 40% increase just in like the first 3 months of this year, 2021. And I thought, why are people fighting on the planes? But everyone's so on edge.
Yeah. I think this pandemic, if anything, has really brought us back. In fact, for me, it has evoked the same emotions that happened or that came up 20 years ago.
Yes, I felt that. Yes.
There were people were isolated. There was, people questioned everything that they did.
Yes.
They questioned their work. They questioned their relationships. They questioned the meaning of everything and anything that they were doing.
Yes.
And so in that sense, it was no different from a 9/11 for me personally.
Yeah.
But it's unfortunate.
Yeah. Oh, so go ahead, please. No, I was going to say, any advice kind of with the lens that you have and the work that you've been doing?
I think it's very important to take that time for ourselves in these times. We, even in these times, I see that most of us look for that fulfillment outside. I mean, you see that the minute the things started becoming somewhat easier,
Yes.
travel opened up, and people are just traveling like and fighting on the planes and whatever, right? So we're still constantly drawn outwards. We're looking for that we're looking for that impulse to fulfill that void in something that's outwardly.
Yes.
Something that's something I did when I did not know any better.
Yes.
I traveled the world and I did this and I did that to fulfill, and so I can completely understand wanting
Yes.
to go and eat out and go to a bar, but just knowing that perhaps it's not a more sustainable modality. It can bring a momentary respite. It can bring some relief for a few moments, maybe a day, maybe a week, but then you come back to that same state of, "Ugh,
Yeah.
what is this? How long is this going to last?"
Yeah.
And facing that extended period of time when you are in your own company. Um, yeah. So I guess that taking that little time to be with yourself,
Yeah.
with some effort initially, and then let your experience guiding.
When you're faced with a challenge, a situation of uncertainty, do you pray on it? Do you meditate on it? How do you approach it? And then how do you actually stay open for the clarity of the wisdom that wants to come through you? And I'll just layer one more piece to that. And do you believe that the answers are within, waiting to reveal themselves, and accessible?
Yes, I think so. I think that some of the biggest questions in life, and I'm not talking about answers to how do I go from point A to point B, right? That perhaps I can get it from Google Maps. So there are these tactical
Yeah.
answers that we seek
Yeah.
in life, or how to approach this situation, and perhaps looking for those things inward is not probably as helpful. But some of the most bigger, like existential questions, if one may have, I think those questions that Google cannot answer those. Those questions have to be answered from within, I feel. And yeah, I also feel that as you meditate, as you find that space, and especially my experience with sky breath, it refines your perception, it refines your intuition, it refines your ability to discriminate. And when those faculties are more well honed, then it becomes that much easier to move through life, no matter, like, irrespective of the circumstances. You move without being stuck. Even, of course, life happens. Things happen.
Yes.
You experience joy, you experience loss, and those things will pull you down. But
Yes.
You will stay with those experiences, but not their emotional grip per se. And that has been my personal experience, and that's something I would not trade for anything else.
Yes. And use the word intuition. Does your intuition guide you? Do you feel connected to it, and to trust it now, I imagine?
Yes, for sure. Um, it's very hard to say, oh, this is my intuition versus this is something that my imagination. Sometimes when you make a concept out of it, it can become a little challenging cloudy to discern between the two. But yes, I mean, I have seen, without again putting much effort, or without saying, okay, now I'm going to close my eyes and tap into my intuition.
Yes.
Not like that.
No.
But when I see myself this over and over again, that I'm in the spur of the moment, when I have to make a decision, and I make I choose a particular way, going down that path and looking back, I feel I made the right choice. So in that sense, yes, I feel that my intuition has been more of a friend now than it ever was.
Yes, especially with an analytical mind. I mean, I'm somebody who likes to research. I don't, I wasn't in finance, but I definitely like to look for the answers, even though I feel like my intuition is very strong, but it's not always easy to trust it, even though
Yes.
when you know you've trusted it, it never steers you down the wrong path. And then when you don't trust it and you second guess it, it usually kind of gives you a little smack on the face and say, hey, I told you, like, you should have listened to me. I was talking to you, but you didn't want to hear it. And so maybe you'll trust me next time.
Yes.
Do you have a different life view now in terms of like why we're here? I mean, not to get too deep, but I just curious, do you have a sense of the meaning? I mean, I'm going to go a little deep. I guess that is deep, but I'm just curious.
I think we are here to make the most of life. We are here to enjoy. We are here to really be the best version of ourselves and move towards that and evolve in that direction. I think, life is given, these senses are given to us to really enjoy the world. And I feel that few moments of retrieving inwards makes it even more juicier, even more fulfilling to be able to do that.
I love that. Well, let me just ask you about Elements Truffles, which you co-founded with your wife. So at some point you left Wall Street. Were you feeling, I saw in your book that was sort of a dream that maybe you were going to put off till retirement or something, but how did you and your wife decide to start it? Now, just, I will say it's an artisanal chocolate company built on the values of Ayurveda, sustainability, and giving back, and ethical trade. So how did you end up with your chocolate company?
It was just, my wife and I, we waited a long time to do something together. She was also a Wall Street trader, and we used to literally live like roommates, if at all seeing each other on weekends. And at some point of time, said, all right, enough of this grind and let's do something together.
Yes.
And two things that kept coming was meditation and chocolates at the top of the list of things that make us happy. And so I said, all right, let's create something that has a real impact at the intersection of these two things. And so the Ayurveda inspired chocolates were born. And it's, we work directly with the farmers in impoverished regions of Ecuador. We get their produce without a middleman. They're ethically sourced and ethically made.
Wow.
Mindfully made. The team meditates. And 25% of the profits are donated towards education of underprivileged children. So we wanted to create something that has a lot of heart, from supply chain to all the way to the end consumer, and also something that gives us joy.
Well, and it makes other people happy too.
It makes other people happy.
Who doesn't? Well, not everyone loves chocolate, but I think most people love chocolate. I might have to have you and your wife back on just to talk about the entrepreneurial path on how did you figure all that out. But that would be a separate interview. Is there anything I didn't ask that you really want to leave people with today from, what you wanted to impart from your book and the work that you've discovered that's been so healing and empowering in your life?
I think we talked about everything. Perhaps one of my learnings from my teacher and through this practice of meditation is that, me from 20 years ago was constantly in action, like wanting to do, like achieve, run. And there was no, it was all about effort. There was no letting go. And then what I learned through this breathwork technique is, in life, there is room for both. They both coexist, effort and effortlessness. Like to give your 100%, to do everything that you have, to get to a certain point, and then let go, and let it happen. And that process of letting go can be a little scary and one can be very unsure of how that may feel, because our culture, our upbringing has taught us to not let go of control. We want to be in control at every moment. So as scary or as ethereal or out there it may sound, perhaps it's worth trying it. And there's a magic really happens when you let go.
What a beautiful place to end. Just a fantastically interesting conversation. I really enjoyed this. I know my audience will. I would love to direct them to every place they can find you, which will be over on my website at thegoodlifecoach.com. And on the show notes page, I want to be able to direct them. So give us your various handles, including for the chocolate company, for anyone who wants to check that out.
Sure. My website, kushalchoksi.com,
Yes.
where you can find the links to the book on Amazon or the stores. My social handles, I'm fairly active as a first-time author on social media ever.
Where are you? Where do you tend to hang out? Which social?
Instagram and Facebook.
Okay.
And
are you Kushal Choksi on there too?
I am Choksi 108 on Instagram.
Okay. And again, I will link this to make it easy for people to find.
Sure. It's my last name followed by number 108 on Instagram.
Okay.
And our chocolates are sold on the brand called Elements Truffles, elementstruffles.com. You can find more about it on our website.
And the Sky Breath, we can find you if somebody wants to take a class with you.
With me, it's on my website on kushalchoksi.com, or go to artofliving.org and look up for Sky Breath meditation workshops and look me up as an instructor, and my upcoming offerings will pop up.
Wonderful. Yeah, for sure. I'm going to be checking that out. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for writing your beautiful memoir, your book, and just very grateful to have had you share today. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Thanks for giving me this opportunity.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. I hope you gained some new information or inspiration for your life. That the essence of this show is to really wake up to what's possible for you, to reclaim your beautiful voice, and to really learn to love and prioritize yourself. So if you gained any value from any of the conversations you've tuned into, make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast player. You can do that right now on your phone. And please do consider leaving a rating and review if you have yet to do so on Apple Podcasts. It's actually how more women can find the show. And I really want to grow a community of women who are loving themselves and living full on. So thank you as always for tuning in. And I look forward to reconnecting with you next Wednesday. Bye for now.